Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury beauty. And today we're going to take a look at the new DIOR offerings. So DIOR has just released 5 new limited edition velvet eyeshadow quints. I picked up 3 of the 5, so we're going to look at swatches, comparisons, and looks for all of them. These are 7 grams. You see that they've got this beautiful, sleek, matte black packaging, typical metal push bar here, and they're made in France with a 6-month shelf life. This one here is probably, in my opinion, the most striking of the 5. It's 189 blue velvet, and it's actually described as having blue and lavender tones. I don't really think it's very lavender. Blue and some mauve. You've got some silver in here as well. It's a really beautiful palette. And then we also have this one here, which is 519 Nude Dentelle. And you have a couple of like truly neutral nudes, a little bit cooler shade, and then some warmer shades here. And then we also have 629 Coral Paisley, which is going to be more of your orangey coral tones. And these are velvet palettes. If you are familiar with the DIOR eyeshadow formulas, they do have singles with a velvet formula, and some of the shades in these palettes do have that velvet formula. However, the palettes themselves are not all matte or all velvet formula. You have some satins and shimmers in here as well. So I'm not exactly sure why these are considered a velvet palette. I think the stars essentially of the palettes are going to be the shades that are in the velvet formula, but they're not strictly velvets in here. So just something to note. Now, all right, so we're going to start off with swatches. Let's start off with 189 blue velvet, and I'm swatching the 2 at the top, then the middle, and then the 2 at the bottom for each of these. You can see that the silver here is going to be a lighter shade. We have a cornflower blue satin shade, and then we have a more mauve tone shade in the middle, and this is going to be like a satin matte. Then at the bottom we have 2 matte shades. We have more of like a Wedgwood blue, and this is like a deep navy, almost black, it's that blue black. And these 2 mattes are more of the velvet formula. It's a matte velvet. Next, let's look at 519 Nude Dentelle. By the way, I have been dyeing Easter eggs, painting, and tie-dyeing all week. So excuse my fingers. They are a little bit stained. And this is the top 3 shades in Nude Dentelle. So again, you can see that we have some satin shades here at the top. This is more of a matte shade, and then these 2 down here at the bottom are going to be more of the velvet formula here. You kind of have this like rusty brown. Actually, I think it's really pretty. It's not as a shade that I typically go for, and it made me wary about this quint, but I really like it. So we have more of a caramel bronze. This is going to be softer version of that with a little bit more caramel. It's also a little cooler in tone. This is going to be a really light, kind of like a tan matte shade with a touch of peach in it. You can see there's a tiny bit of a satin sheen to it. And then again, we have this like reddish rusty brown, almost like a lighter sienna brown. And then this one here is going to be a cooler tone, rich cocoa brown. And next we have 629 Coral Paisley. And this one, this white shimmery shade is probably the most shimmery shade in the 3 that I picked up. You can see right off the bat here that the top 2 shades are definitely going to be satins. I think a little bit more of that middle shade here. And then our middle shade is going to be a matte. So this is going to be a peachy golden shade. This is really more of a sparkly ivory, and you can see the shimmer in there is a little bit more intense. And then we have kind of like a nude peach matte shade. And then at the bottom we have more of a pumpkin orange. And this is going to be a rich brown. You can see it's almost a mix of the two in Nude Dentel. It's got like those redder, warmer undertones to it, yet it's not completely warm. So these are the 3 palettes that I picked up. Now, before we move on to the looks and more details about the eyeshadows, Dior has released some other items as well. They have reformulated their liquid eyeliners. So these are the Dior Show On Stage liners. They are waterproof. And by the way, the Quints and these items are currently exclusive to Nordstrom and Dior.com. The liners, all of the shades are on Dior.com, but they are not all on Nordstrom. Nordstrom has about half of them. So I picked up the shade 386 Pearly Emerald. It looks brighter in the pictures online, but you can see it is more of a soft forest green with some shimmer. And the shimmer in here, you know, it's really more of a metallic sheen. It's not really like glitter per se. There are very, very fine sparkly particles, but it doesn't really lean silvery or warmer. And then they've also reformulated the brow gel. I picked up the shade Blonde. I'll just kind of get a little bit of that there. You can see it's going to be a light taupe. This is shade number 1. And let's move on to the looks and we'll continue talking. So Dior has also reformulated their mascaras, the Dior Show and the Pump and Volume mascaras, to include more natural origin ingredients. And natural origin ingredients just means that your parent ingredient has come from, you know, it's a naturally occurring substance. That does not mean, however, that the final product is necessarily a natural ingredient. So just a heads up there, you know, this is part of Dior's more like clean beauty initiative. And there's still a huge range, a huge spectrum of things that can fall under naturally derived or natural origin ingredients. So one other thing I wanted to mention about ingredients is these eyeshadow palettes, these velvet eyeshadow palettes, these have come out now kind of in reference to 1993. That's when Dior first released their velvet eyeshadows. They had a Quint with velvet eyeshadows in 1993, and Peter Phillips decided to kind of, you know, create these 5 in homage to that particular palette. So one of the things that they have done to differentiate the ingredients between the typical Quints that are part of the permanent collection that are not in this velvet line versus these here is they have included cornflower extract. And this is going to be the first time that they have used that. So I wasn't really sure what cornflower extract did. So I did a little searching, and basically cornflower extract can be used for a variety of things, but essentially it's going to be there for anti-inflammatory reasons. It can also help, you know, kind of, it's not necessarily a drying ingredient, but it could be used in makeup essentially to kind of keep your eyelids a little bit more dry to prevent like creasing and so forth. So these are supposed to be longer wearing, and that cornflower extract is supposed to help with that. So essentially, I think that's going to be the main purpose of them using the cornflower extract in these particular Quints. Now, I have normal skin, leans slightly dry, but I typically do not have a major issue with creasing of eyeshadows. Sometimes I do, but with Dior Quints, I honestly really don't. They are not something that typically creases on me. And with all of these eye looks and in general, I always use a Viseart Seamless Eye Primer as a base. So I used that this time, and you know, I have not had issues with creasing on these. So it's hard for me to say whether they perform better over a longer period of time than the traditional Quints, because again, those are great on me as well. Now, as for these Quints being part of the Velvet collection, I have to say I really like the packaging on these. I think it's really sleek. I like the matte black, and when I first read that they were using matte black packaging, I was a little afraid it was going to be that like soft touch matte black, you know, that can get sticky over time, and it's not. It's smooth plastic. So I really like it. It stays easy to clean. And you know, it's not a fingerprint magnet, so I actually prefer this packaging. It does, these Quints, they come with the typical applicators that you will always get with the DIOR Quints. You have the plastic cover, and then you have the little brush and foam tip applicator, the dual ended ones. So, you know, those are the same as always in here. As for the actual formulas of the eyeshadows and everything, I cannot say that I notice a huge difference in the way that these go on. The Velvet formula actual shades in here, those are ones that they do go on more smoothly with a patting motion versus a swiping motion. And you can see in the demos that with some of them, especially with the blue Quint, the blue Velvet, when I'm using the Synergy Soft Shader to kind of spread those deeper shades, you can see it can look a little bit patchy. It doesn't look that smooth, and it kind of, you know, you can see a little bit of like the veining in my eyelids through it and so forth. So it didn't look so hot there, but that's because those shades are intended to be patted on. So you want to use a patting motion with your brush, and you actually get this really beautiful soft velvety finish that way, which you'll see in the final look that I'm wearing today. And they go on and they blend beautifully that way. So I think, you know, it's really more about application. But I think all of the shades in here have performed really well. Let's go palette by palette. The blue Velvet, let's start with that. I think all of the shades perform really well. But the silver, I just have to say, is not quite what I expected. I thought it would be a little bit more pigmented. And you can see that it's a really beautiful shade, but it's very, very sheer. It's a very soft, pale gray. And it's just not what I was expecting. Now that I have actually seen it and touched it and used it, I really appreciate its presence in this palette, because I think these blues can be a little bit overpowering, and this is a really great shade to just kind of tone things down. You can put this on top of things to tone it down a little bit, but it just blends beautifully with them without providing so much color that, you know, you kind of get that softer gradient that just looks like a really soft, more natural finish. Not that the color is natural, but you know, the actual finish itself looks incredibly smooth. So I have to say, I really ended up liking that shade a lot. The blues are all very nice. I like how you've got the two velvets for the deeper shades, and then you have that cornflower blue satin shade, which again is going to be a little bit of a lighter shade, but that shimmer in there really goes on nicely. And I think this shade does look better with a patting motion as well. Now, as for the mauve shade in the middle, I really like that. It reminded me at first of the shade in the DIOR Black Bow palette, and they are different. They look different. The finish on these is different as well. This is going to be more matte, and this is also going to be more like plum. And I think it's a really beautiful shade, and I like having it mixed with these because I think, you know, it's just a really good compliment to them. And I think for me, it works best, like I personally like it best towards the inner corner as a gradient moving out, or in the crease. But, you know, this is also a really great all over lid color, and just use an accent of the blue or an accent of the silver. So I think it's really nice to have those different shades in that palette, because it just kind of, it makes a difference, you know. It makes the palette itself more versatile. It's something that you're going to reach for more, since let's face it, we don't typically wear eyeshadow, blue eyeshadow every single day. Moving on, we'll go backwards here. We're looking at 519 Nude Dentel. And I have to say, I think this palette, you know, as soon as I heard the name Nude Dentel, I was like, oh, I gotta get that. And I was thinking it was going to be a little bit more neutral, a little bit cooler in tone than it looked in the pictures. And then I got it, and yes, it definitely looks warmer. These are going to be your warm neutrals. They remind me more of like desert tones, but I have to say that they are really pretty, and I really like the inclusion of the top right shade and the middle shade. Those two are a little bit cooler. They're also very, very light, so they mix well with the others. The middle, like peachy nude shade, that is fantastic as an all over eye base for me. I absolutely love that shade. And the top right is just a little bit, you know, of a satin shade with a little bit more like taupe to it. It's a really beautiful color though. I have to say all of these performed beautifully, and I think this is a really great addition to my neutral eyeshadows, and it mixes well with the other palettes as well. Coral Paisley 629. This one, you know, it swayed me because the eye look that they have on Dior.com and the promo photos, it was just stunning. I absolutely love it. And if they did not have this ivory white shade in here, I have to say I probably would not love this palette as much as I do. But I think the inclusion of that was really helpful. Now I have to say though, this palette does remind me of some other palettes. Dior's been coming out with a lot of these like warm, more orangey based palettes recently. So we've got quite a few comparisons we're going to look at for these. But overall, I have to say I like the palette, and for me, I think kind of that deep rusty brown, the last shade in here, as well as basically the whole right side, the middle and the top right. Those are all kind of the shades. I think they make the palette. I think it's nice to have those like orangier shades there as a pop, but my primary use will probably be for those three on the right. And I have to say they all performed very beautifully. This ivory white sparkly shade, I really like that, and I like to use it for all of the palettes, but you know, it could technically be replaced with like a highlight shade or something like that if you don't pick up this palette but you like what I did in the final look. So overall, I think all of those palettes are great. The eyeliner, I only picked up one of them because I wanted some shades from Dior.com as well, and I picked up the Pearly Emerald. This shade here is beautiful, and these eyeliners, they dry fairly quickly. They don't budge. They don't smudge either. So even when I am like playing with the swatch, no matter how hard I press, you can see like I've kind of changed the finish a little bit on it. I haven't taken it off. It's not on my finger. It has not migrated on my hand. These things really stay put, but they do come off easily with soap and water. Well, you know, easily for a liquid liner. So I like the finish on these. I like the performance. It's a felt tip liner, and I found it really easy to use. Now, felt tip liners, I do find that after you use them a lot, sometimes, you know, putting them on top of shadow, they can skip. I have not noticed that yet, but again, I've only used it in this one eye look so far. So I will definitely have an update on that on the future, but I have to say so far so good, because typically even with a brand new liner, you know, going over the eyeshadow on the second eye sometimes I can already see skipping. And I didn't notice any skipping at all with this liner. So I'm very pleased with that. The brow gel I think is basic. You know, I don't really notice anything special or different from the previous one. But it's a nice brow gel, and it's going to provide a little bit of color, a little bit of hold. It's not going to be the you know, best hold brow gel in my opinion. But it's not stiff, it's very comfortable, and it's really easy to use. So it's definitely one that I would use a lot during the summer when I'm going for those quick and easy makeup looks. So let's go ahead and take a look at some comparisons. We're going to start off with the Dior singles. We're looking here at the satin single in 240 denim. And you can see here that this is a satin cornflower blue. Let's see how it compares. All right, so it's gonna be a little bit lighter. Let's just make that swatch. Let's go over it again. Yeah, so it's gonna be a lighter blue. It's also a little bit pearlier. Next, we have 481 Poncho. This is a satin formula as well. This is going to be cooler in tone, but I figure this is a shade that probably a lot of people have, so might help you see the tone difference. But you can see that this is going to be a cooler, beautiful brown. This is one of my most used singles from Dior. I really love the Poncho shade, but it's very similar to the one in the Quint, which is relatively new for me. I had the single first. Then we have 570 Copper, which is a velvet shade. Now, the velvet shades, they feel very silky to the touch. They have a slightly different texture to them than the regular mattes. Like they feel a little less powdery. So this is Copper. This one here is cashmere. So the matte, you know, again, this is a matte formula. This one's going to feel just a little bit more, a little more powdery, but a little bit creamier powder. So again, this one's not going to match any of these. It's going to be cooler. This is 573 Nude Dress Satin formula, and we're just going to put that one kind of close to that. Nope, that's going to be cooler as well. You can see that this shade here is going to be warmer, a little peachier. This is 530 Tulle, which is a satin shade, and I wanted to see how that kind of went with this matte shade in the middle, but that's more golden. Tulle is going to be a little bit more golden. This is 45 Gris DIOR. This is a metallic shade. This is very different from the silver and the blue, but I wanted to compare them just so you could see the difference. You can see this one's going to be soft and light as well, but it's really a different finish. This is going to be kind of a stiffer finish than this. This is a little bit smoother, but you can see here the difference. This is also going to be more blue based, whereas this is going to be a little bit warmer to kind of be a little bit more of a contrast with the tones of the blue. And then this is 658 Beige Mitza, which is metallic. This shade does not go with any, but again, I thought this was kind of, you know, a shade that a lot of people have. So you can kind of see, because this is the one that's like Cosmopolite. And this is 446 Sienna, which is a satin shade. So this is the orangey yellow shade, but you can see that this is really going to be more of a mandarin yellow orange compared to this like true pumpkin here. This is kind of more like the first shade, but way amped up. So we're going to take a look at the Quints now. This is 569 Golden Day. Let's take a look at this, and we're going to look at this middle shade here. So let's put the middle shade up here so you can kind of see that. It's going to be redder. It's much warmer in tone. And then let's put this shade here. Now, and you can see that that's going to be like metallic. Now, this is DIOR 279 Denim. We're going to go ahead and swatch the whole thing just because it is DIOR's other blue palette, but they don't go. The DIOR Denim, you know, you got some blue, but really they're more like teal and aqua, and, you know, they're more green based. So the name denim didn't really quite go with me. The closest is going to be the blue, but you can see it's closest to this more Wedgwood, but this is going to be deeper. It's also going to be a little bit more vibrant. So that's our denim quad. You can see how different they are. This is 469 Atelier Doré. And let's go ahead and take a look at this brown one here. We're going to put that here. You can see that that's kind of similar to that one there. We do have a pure gold. These browns, you know, those don't quite go, but let's look at the last brown here and see how this compares. Much deeper and cooler actually. But it actually looks warmer in the pan than the other one does. This is 559 Poncho. So let's go ahead and look at this one. Let's put that right here as well. That's kind of close in color, but it's going to be more golden. Let's look at the middle shade here and let's squeeze it in right there. And we'll look at these bottom two. I'm just going to put them down here, but you can see that they're going to be cooler. All right, moving on, we have 769 Tutu. And this, you've got more of the like purpley tones. Let me just show you this one. This is more of like I consider it more of a lilac purple. I think that's kind of the closest in here. Let's also, though, take a look at the mauve shade that's in here. Can see how much deeper that is, but I feel like these two shades kind of inspired the color story for the Blue Velvet palette. This is 022 Cruise Look. This one here was a limited edition palette that came out last year. Let's start with the middle shade here. And let's compare it with this one. You can see this is a little bit more brown, but they are relatively close. We'll look at these two as well. Let's put them here. That kind of goes with that one, but this one here doesn't quite have anything similar to it. This is $6.69 soft cashmere, and these shades are not really gonna go either, but again, it's a popular palette. So let's put these two here and just kind of see how much cooler those are. And then let's take a look at the two bottom shades here. The other shade is a topper. So let's put the deep one here so you can see how that compares. That's kind of close. And then this is the shade on the bottom left. You can see that's going to be much cooler in tone. It's got more of that gray base to it. Then we have Black Bow. So we're just going to look at the mauve and the gray. And let's put the mauve right here. You can see it's going to be deeper. I did break mine. And then that's the gray. So you can see the difference. You know, this is going to be a much deeper palette, but I think the tones are beautiful in that palette. But you can see that this is going to be, you know, it's got a little bit more like gray purple in it versus more of that red or plum tone. This is $4.29 Toile de Jouy. And let's take a look at this orangier shade here, this coral. So there's that. And let's look at the bottom or the last shade as well. We'll put that one right here. It's gonna be more brown. And we'll look at the middle shade as well. So we'll just put this one right here. Kind of like that one. All right, so those are it for my comparisons. You can see that these shades are not exactly the same as any of the others, at least in my collection, but there are definitely some similarities and some nods to them. And I do feel like some of the color stories are similar, especially with like the Nude Dentelle and the Coral Paisley. You know, they do not have matches to any of the other shades. However, the general concept of the color stories can be very similar to some of the other palettes. So it depends how nuanced you like to get with your similar shadows. I personally love seeing all of the subtle differences. So, you know, I think all three of these palettes are great in my collection. My favorite is going to be the Blue Velvet. I mean, I love blue eyeshadow palettes, and I think this is kind of what I wanted denim to be. Denim's a little bit greener than what I wanted it to be. It's also very vibrant, whereas this one here, Blue Velvet, can be very muted depending on how you apply it, or you can really amp it up. But I feel like this is a really sophisticated way to do blue, and I think this palette itself, you know, it's got those variations in the shades, not just the blue shades, but I mean like the mauve and so forth, where you're really kind of able to change up what you want and just use the blue as a punch. So I think it's really well thought out. It's definitely my favorite of these. I have to say the Nude Dentelle palette is also one that I really appreciate. You know, it's probably not going to beat Soft Cashmere for me, which is my favorite of the DIOR Quints, but it's definitely going to be up there with one of my most used. I actually think the Blue Velvet is going to be one of my most used as well. Tutu is one of my favorites also. The Coral Paisley, I think, is fantastic for summer, and I think it's really a great addition to my collection because I typically don't go for those warmer tones, but I really like this like pop of orange in there. Like that's really pretty to me, and I love this deeper brown. I think this is kind of what I was hoping some of the ones that we use for comparisons. I was kind of hoping some of those would look more like this one. So I think it's a really great addition. You know, I actually forgot. This is $7.19 Organza, and this one came out just recently, and I really love this palette. So let's just take a look at this. We're skipping the gold shade. Let's look at the other four real quickly here and just see how that compares. Really running out of space here. So the DIOR Organza and Coral Paisley, you can see they're very different. But I have to say, this Organza palette is it's been one of my most used palettes this year. I really like it. It was my favorite palette from the spring 2022 collections, not just DIOR, like in general. And I feel like it's kind of like a softer, kind of a similar color story. You can see it's a very different, but I feel like the general vibe is kind of like a softer version of it. I just think this Coral Paisley is a great spring palette in general. So if you missed the Organza or maybe it wasn't exactly what you wanted, the Coral Paisley might be a good option. So I have to say I really like that. So final thoughts. I personally love these 3 new matte palettes. I love the packaging in particular, and I kind of wish that all of the palettes were this matte black because it's a little bit cleaner, you know, not so fingerprinty. The eyeliner, I really like the eyeliner so far, but I will have an update as to how it performs after I've used it more. But I found it really easy to use, and I'm really happy with their new color selection. I think it's really nice. The brow gel, I think, it's nice if you're looking for a brow gel. You know, it's a nice, safe choice. It's just, I don't notice anything different about the new version of it. I think they just changed up the ingredients to make it a little bit cleaner, but I don't think like performance was affected or anything in any way with the change. So I hope this was helpful. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this collection, these palettes. And again, the palettes are exclusive to Nordstrom and Dior.com. The other new items, that's currently where they are as well, but you know, I believe they will be expanding to other stores as the liners, the brow gel, the mascara, those are all permanent. It's just the palettes that are limited edition. And let me know what you grabbed or if you are planning on picking something up. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope this was helpful. I'll see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks. Have a great day.